Hey guys, it's Quana back again with another Her Real review. Hope you guys are doing awesome. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Netflix movie Concrete Cowboy. It stars Idris Elba, it stars Caleb McLaughlin, it stars Lorraine Touissant, one of my favorite actresses. It was directed by Ricky Straub and it's based on a book entitled Ghetto Cowboy by Gregory Neary. It is based on a real life horse riding club in North Philly called the Fletcher Street Urban Riding Club. It has a long-standing history of black cowboys in Philly who's basically took it upon themselves to reclaim and rescue horses that the city had abandoned as innovation came along with cars and things of that nature. And if you're not familiar, because many people seem to not be familiar with black cowboys, there's a long-standing tradition of black cowboys going back way into the early days of cowboys in America. You have Bass Reeves. A lot of people learned about Bass Reeves through the Watchmen series on HBO. He was the inspiration for the Lone Ranger. I know for myself, growing up in North Carolina, it was not uncommon to ride down the road and see black young men and older men riding horses down the streets, even in communities that might have looked decrepit or very much like poor neighborhoods in the community. It was just not an uncommon thing. Beyonce and Solange have mentioned it in their songs. So it's not uncommon, but a lot of people, especially in urban areas, are not familiar with it. This book takes this real life organization and applies a fictional account to it. And basically the overall premise of it is that there's this young boy named Cole, played by Caleb McLaughlin from Stranger Things and from the BET miniseries of the New Edition story. And he's 15 years old. He gets into some trouble in school and his mother does not know what to do with him, so she sends him to live with his father who lives in North Philly. And he soon learns that his father is a member of this club and he owns a horse. There's a horse living in his apartment building and he is a real life urban cowboy. He and his father butt heads, especially as Caleb finds himself entangled into some drug culture with his friend Smoosh, played by Jarrell Jerome, who is from When They See Us and Moonlight. And as he tries to get himself out of these situations, it's a real life coming of age story, really. His father, played by Idris Elba, uses this organization to help teach his son a code of conduct, a code of honor and valor surrounding the lore and the history of urban cowboys. Right now, this movie, I think, is sitting at around a 65% on Rotten Tomatoes. But I'm going to tell you why I think that you should watch the movie. So before we go into that, do me a favor and click the subscribe button down below. And we're going to talk about why you should watch Concrete Cowboy. All right, so I've given you the overall premise, but I'm going to give you some pros about why you should watch this movie. One, the history. This is a very little known history for much of the world, and so it gives certainly a viewpoint of black life, black culture that is unknown to a lot of people. And there's a lot of pride in this movie. These characters have a great deal of honor and respect, both for themselves, for their community, for their horses. It's about them fighting gentrification in North Philly. It's a very much of a David and Goliath story. And so it is very enjoyable. It's a very good feel-good movie. I would not call this a family movie because there is some violence and blood and language, but there isn't a whole lot of sex in it. So I would definitely say that children 13 and up, depending on their level of exposure to violence and language, adult language and themes, could handle this movie. It is certainly a movie that makes one take stock of the things that they're teaching their children and the history that they want to pass on to their children. Another thing that I think works really well in this movie is actually the cast. And I'm going to talk about the A-list cast in just a second, but much like another very popular movie right now that's gotten a lot of Oscar nomination, this movie uses members of the real life Fletcher Street Urban Riding Club in the movie. And hearing them speak authentically, tell stories, their presence on screen, which feels very realistic because they're familiar with these horses, works really well. And those are some of my favorite moments of the movie. Another thing is the cast. Caleb McLaughlin does a great job in the role of Cole. He brings that feeling of a 15-year-old who is at war with being a child and being an adult. He brings a lot of charm to the role. You see him trying to have this hardened persona. And if you've ever met like a teenager who tried to be hard and sophisticated, but you know, there was really a big softy nature underneath him, he definitely carries that on screen. I was not aware that Caleb was already 19 years old, and I am really wondering what's going on with the next season of Stranger Things, because these kids are aging quickly. Before the next season, I'm going to have to do a review, because I definitely think for how old these kids are getting, there's a real argument to be made that Stranger Things should have been an anthology series instead of following the same cast of characters, because these kids are getting old fast, and I don't know what age they're going to be playing when they come back. But Caleb is 19. He's got a full mustache. He looks like a young man. So I'm just saying, but he does a really good job. Also, Lorraine Tucson, who is one of my favorite actresses. I've loved her from the 90s. There was a HBO anthology that she was a part of that was a Black culture centered anthology, and I cannot think of the name of it for a life of me. But one of the episodes was entitled "The Boy Who Painted Jesus Black," and I want to say that Jasmine Guy was also in it. If anyone remembers the name of that series, let me know down below in the comments. But I love Lorraine Tucson. Anytime she is in a role, she brings a very warm, nurturing spirit to her, but also a grittiness, like someone who could just be real. I really wish she had a little bit more dialogue in this movie. Idris Elba had very little dialogue in this movie, but I definitely can see why he was involved. Aside from being an executive producer in this movie, I can definitely see that his work in The Wire is one of the reasons that drew him to this project. He gets a chance to stretch his legs on that Philly accent that he tried to perfect with The Wire, and he brings a lot of that. He does bring some of that cowboy, stereotypical cowboy persona, very stern and quiet kind of presence that works well. And there are some really touching moments toward the second half of the movie with him and Caleb's character that feel very warm to me, that work really, really well. And of course, Jharrel Jerome, he is always so charismatic on screen. So his character, he plays a character named Smush, and he's very charismatic. Oh, and did I forget to tell you that Method Man was in this movie? So that's another reason for you to watch this movie. Cons about the movie: there's not a lot of dialogue at the first half of this movie, which means that you're trying to figure out a lot of the relationships between the characters, and also figuring out why characters just aren't speaking to each other, and in a way that it just doesn't make sense that they wouldn't be speaking to each other, at least a little bit, and with a little bit more clarity. And sometimes I find that with roles like this, you know, okay, Idris Elba's character is supposed to be like the, you know, urban cowboy, stoic and everything. But some of the other characters, they talk in circles. And I feel like that's a trope with Black writing, is that Black people don't know how to get to the point. But there's always that one or two people who are like, let me just get to the point. And so it seems like a lot of the adults are speaking in code to Caleb in a way that he just doesn't understand what's going on. Very few people are speaking plainly to him, and that doesn't come across well on the screen at times. And it's just not a lot of dialogue. When we're introduced to Caleb at the beginning, we really don't know what he's done in school to warrant this. We don't really see him engaged with anyone, and we don't really know what his life was like in Detroit. So when his mother brings him to his father, we really don't know what he's leaving behind other than his mom. And then there are other characters that he must have had some relationship with his father at some point, because there's these other people in Philly who know him. So at some point he and his mother lived in Philly, and we really don't ever find out like how he's connected to those people. Obviously he hasn't seen them since he was a kid, but they remember him very distinctly, even though they've just seen him and it's been these years. So those are moments where it just feels like that was an absence in script writing, that with a couple of tweaks. There's also a lot of montages that take up unnecessary space and they don't move quickly enough, like scenes where he's shoveling poop. And we don't need a 5-minute montage or segment of him shoveling poop. We can see that in like a 30-second reel and save 4.5 minutes that could be given to dialogue between characters. That being said, I think the movie has way more positives than negatives. I definitely think that it's a movie that you should check out. In terms of my rating, I'm going to give this a B, a solid B. Like I said, from a traditional movie making standpoint, it does lack. I think if there had been a stronger director involved with this project, I can't really find out a whole lot about Ricky Straub. I've only seen about 3 projects that are connected to him on IMDb. So if you know of more, let me know. But I think if they had been given a stronger director, this movie could have gone through with a little bit more nuance, and it would have been a stronger project. But I'm very grateful that it sheds light on this organization. I think that it ultimately has more positive, it has a hopeful ending and ends on a hopeful nature that has a lot of dignity in this community that made me feel very glad I watched it. I teared up at some times, but it was a very joyful tearing up at times as well. So definitely I give it a B. I think you should check it out. So let me know down below in the comments if you've already watched Concrete Cowboy. What did you think about it? I tried to give my review with as few spoilers as possible, so do me a favor, if you go check it out, come back to the channel, let me know what you thought about it, okay guys? All right, so if you like this video and you want to join in for more content, hit the subscribe and the like button, and until next time guys, toodles.